I think Gus Garcia or someone earlier, one of the speakers talked about the home visiting. I think that is awesome. I know they do it at the early childhood level, but I think that needs to transfer more beyond because, like, us becoming teachers in this new millennium, we have to understand there's a lot of parents that work, more than one job. It's hard for them to get to the schools for the conference. So, the reason why I say that because once I keep saying I'm a parent myself, my son's daycare do 2 home visits a year. They do one in the fall, one in the spring, where they take time out on a Saturday, sit down with me in the home environment where most parents feel comfortable versus is going to the school, sitting down in the school, talking on the teacher in an uncomfortable setting. But when you talk to parents in their home, they're more open to tell you the issues or the concerns that they have with their student, because I open up more when the teacher comes to my home, because for one, this teacher is showing me that she actually cares what my son is learning. As a parent, I'm concerned, what is going on in the classroom? What concerns do you see that I might not see at home, but you see because you have him almost 8 hours a day? So I would wish that could exceed past beyond the early childhood level, because I see so much more in parents and in the kids when, the teacher come out, my son be, oh, well, Miss such and such came and visited me on a Saturday when he's only used to seeing her Monday through Friday.
I think teachers should call a parent when things are going good. It's so important for a parent to get a phone call and the teacher is saying, your child is a wonderful student, he's doing an awesome job. I think that if teachers could get in the habit of communicating with parents on both ends of the spectrum, I think that it allows the parent to really feel like this teacher, first of all, cares, but acknowledges that my student is doing a good job, and as opposed to always being the child who gets in trouble all the time. So that might be a really helpful way to get parents more involved and more welcome in your classroom, is making that phone call when they're doing good.
I think another way is to address the student, have the student talk to their parent. They see them more often than the teacher will. If you get a message over to the student can relay that message to the parent, not just by a piece of paper that says signed by your parents, but like actually communicating, teaching students to communicate. I know that's a totally different topic, but in detail, like that's eventually the connection and the relationship that you're going to have with the student and the parent and yourself. So,
I also think that if you really help a child and you really help to change their experiences, they will go home and talk about you to their families. It could be maybe it's a family that can't afford supplies, but yet you're able to give that student a spiral every month or some pencils. Eventually, that could be a conversation where, oh, Miss Feck gave me the spiral, or I got this sticker from Miss Feck. I mean, 8th graders still love stickers, which is, I can't believe, but I give one sticker and they're like, wow. So the students will go home and talk about the teachers that they really respect. And so I think that opens up a lot of dialogue, or can open dialogue between the parents and the teachers.
I read an article a while back about a...
Let me say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to be the school teacher here. I know that the bell's going to ring in school here pretty soon. So let's make this our last question, and then we'll move on to the next section of the day. Thank you.
This is a big question, so I'm sorry. But, I read an article a while back about a woman from India, and she had a really high-class education. She was a biochemist who had her PhD from Oxford. And then her whole story was about how she moved back into kind of third world conditions. She moved back with her mother in India, who was from a small Indian village, because nobody was hiring to hear the truth that she had to speak. Nobody was hiring, like, worldwide. So kind of at what point do you say that this sort of kind of dropping out is good? Like, this kind of is kind of viewed as insubordination in the whole bigger economic business-run government that we have, and I know that kind of trickles down into education, and it seems like a lot of people in education, maybe just for fear of their jobs or whatever. And I think of what the gentleman said earlier, he was retired. Well, I haven't gotten a job yet, so I'm still free to speak at this point. But, at what point can you say, yes, it's good to be a campesino. You know, we don't have a word for that in this country. And I think, like, you know, I was glad to hear that we had some stuff from Octavio Paz being around, because, you know, in his book, Labyrinth of Solitude, he said, you know, the political foundations of any country to be strong, it comes from a respect for its indigenous people. And we all know how that went here. So, I mean, how do y'all deal with that? A lot of these people's background is kind of, like, it's kind of mandatory to take an assimilationist approach. So how do y'all stand on that?
Okay, so you mentioned dropout. So are you asking, when is our society going to view dropping out as, you said, insubordination?
No, I'm just saying, at what point can you say where your people came from and living simply is just as honorable as success over here, or maybe more so? I mean, you know, I just think that there's, it might enable kids to test better if they already felt like where they came from was good and not belittled in such a way, in a kind of a money status type way.
Right, I agree with that statement, but I guess I don't understand the question. Like,
So how do you explain to a student that where you came from is not as high of a quality as what you're about to get in this classroom?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying, like, at what point can you say, yes, I can't tell you to go get a job for a company that's polluting the environment, and like, it's hard for me to tell you that being out on the corner selling drugs is any better or worse than going and getting a job for a company that's either, you know, just supporting arms dealing or harshing on the environment or what have you.
I think you're getting into the question of identity and the trade-off in terms of the benefits of education versus another job, given the conditions of the environment that they could potentially become a part of. I almost think that questions outside the scope of this conversation, to be quite honest. And so, unless you have if you want to rephrase it, we'll try to address the question. But otherwise, I think that question is probably best it's probably best to leave that question where it is for the time being. Okay.
I have some certificates. Oh. Guys.
Oh, yeah, she's at the end. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's yellow. I'm going to dare answer the gentleman's question. When I began teaching at ACC, 1978, teaching developmental writing, I was a feisty, good liberal or something, intellectual, I guess, as I saw myself as an intellectual, and worried about the hegemony of the power of class and things like that. And my boss, Dorothy Martinez, said to me, you know, it's not really your choice. You, Mrs. Lemon, you have the choice to choose to be in the system or not the system. But there are other folks who haven't had that moment to decide. And I went, oh, thank you. It made a lot of sense to me that it wasn't up to me to do that. It was up to me to offer them the opportunities of education, and they got to do with it whatever they wanted to do with it. So, heck.
We have one last distinguished speaker that's my pleasure to introduce. When I first met this lady, it was in her role as co-chair, tri-chair of the Citizens Bond oversight committee for the AISD. The next time was as the vice president here at ACC for academic transfer and general developmental education, in which role she helped mightily in helping to create the Center for Public Policy and Political Studies. And it would not be here today if it were not for her. Today, she is the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and Student Success for the Lone Star College System. And if you'll check your program, you'll see she has a very distinguished career with a number of honors, and I won't list them all because it's late in the afternoon, but she is one of my good friends, and one of the most outstanding folks I've worked with since I left politics and got into this, Dr. Danetta Goodall. Danetta.
It is so good to be here. Excuse me. I know that it's a long day and you're probably ready to get out of here. And I might speak about some things that have been mentioned a little bit earlier, but I won't linger on them very long. What I do want to do is talk a little bit about, I heard someone mention the demographic shifts. And so I want to talk a little bit about the demographics and then talk about the importance of teaching and what you feel about teaching and what you can bring to it. And earlier there was some discussion about the demographic shifts as it relates to Hispanics. And I would just like to mention that it is estimated that by July of 2008, a little over a year ago, our population of Hispanic citizens was estimated at 46 9/10 million for the United States. It is growing dramatically. And what that means is that this is a group that will be entering the schools, entering the workforces that you will see in the classrooms. And so we talked a little bit about the diversity before. And at one time when we talked about diversity, it was in terms of tolerance. We must tolerate people, their differences, etc. It goes beyond tolerance. It's about honoring people and the differences that they bring and acknowledging. Someone mentioned, oh, by the way, I must tell you that I am very impressed with what I heard from the panel today, because I thought this is such a young group and they seem so mature in, their thinking and their experiences and the advice that they gave. I have taught off and on for a few years, more years than I would be comfortable mentioning in this room. However, I don't recall anyone giving me any advice. The other thing I don't recall is anyone teaching me how to be a teacher. It just did not happen. And so you get into it by trial and error. Well, we have an opportunity now to go beyond trial and error. There are some things on the political scene right now that make it imperative for us to engage in certain practices. And it also issues an imperative that there are some things that need to happen in education, in public education and in higher education. And I know the discussion today has been about public education, pre-K through high school. I want you to also think about the community college, though, and think about moving into the universities to teach beyond the community college. We know that the majority of students who go into teacher education get their start at the community college level, and that has its benefits. It has not been very long that the Higher Education Coordinating Board gave permission for community colleges to even teach education courses or to offer the Associate of Arts in Teaching degree. And so the community colleges are fairly new at this, but really doing an outstanding job. And so you have an opportunity to benefit from all that the community colleges offer, because they offer that setting where you get a chance to know diverse students, where you get a chance to actually practice what you learn in the classroom, where you have an opportunity to go out and do those classroom observations, where you see students who don't look like you, who might have different values, who have a different culture. And so that is when you get a chance to see, to appreciate, and to begin to honor the differences. Now, a question was asked earlier about how you get parents involved, and I thought the explanation about going into the homes is outstanding. I thought it was also a good suggestion that, have some kind of event that families can feel comfortable coming into the school setting, because parents are intimidated quite often by walking into a classroom. Sometimes they're intimidated because they don't have the education themselves. Sometimes they're intimidated because the teachers behave in such a manner that intimidate them. I would like to think that there is not an individual in this classroom who will ever come in contact with a student or with a parent who would do anything that would deliberately do anything that would intimidate someone coming into those hallowed halls, because it is a different environment, it's a different climate, and so we want to make people feel very comfortable. I want to mention just a few other statistics here. It is projected that by July 1, 2050, that the Hispanic population will be 132.8 million people. It is also projected that 25% of the children younger than 5 in 2008 were of Hispanic origin, and that Hispanics comprise 22% of all children younger than 18. This is a large number of students who will be coming into the classrooms. And so we need to recognize that, and we need to prepare ourselves so that we understand something about the culture. We understand something about the different learning styles of students. And we don't try and use the cookie cutter approach. That's when we talk about honoring students. That's when we go beyond and talk about the cultural competence that is expected of higher education institutions, of classrooms, of people, of those of us who recognize that you must educate everyone who chooses to be educated, who can benefit from that education, because then that makes life better for all of us. There is one other statistic that I want to mention, and that's about the number of teachers. Now, I don't have figures on the percentage of Hispanic chief executives or those who are physicians or surgeons, but there are 48,720 post-secondary teachers who are in the workforce now. We know that in Texas, over the years, we have hovered around 40,000 teachers that are needed. And so that's when the Higher Education Coordinating Board decided that they would expand and allow the community colleges to start offering some education courses. But remember, we don't keep teachers very long. We treat them badly in many instances, or they become so uncomfortable and the support is not there that they choose to leave the profession. Well, I contend that there are things that we can do. We can support teachers. We can form learning communities of teachers so that they get that support. It makes all the difference in the world if there is someone that you can call up and ask a question, or someone that you can just sit and discuss, like a Dion that I dealt with here a few years back in a 4th grade math and science academy. Dion I was just convinced that he was going to cause all of us to just have a stroke every day we had to put up with. But you know what? Someone talked about how loving these kids. Dion was in 4th grade. And what Dion needed to know was that in spite of all of the things that he did in that classroom and how he kept us all upset, that we cared about him. And eventually Dion came around. It is important to develop a relationship with a child. And, in these days, that's real tricky. But there are ways to develop positive relationships with children so that you accept them and they know that you accept them, so that you care about them and they know that you care about them, and so that if discipline must be used, you can discipline them with care. But that is so important. We know that students are academically more successful and they persist in school for a longer period of time if they have developed a positive relationship with a caring adult in the educational setting. It can be in elementary school, junior high, middle school now, or high school, or college. it can make all the difference in the world. We know that if we can get to students very early, and many of you are going to be teaching in elementary school, if we can get to those students early and start working with them, it makes all the difference in the world. We do know that by fourth grade, students are going to, in fourth grade, they haven't really noticed the little boys and little girls yet. But, in kind of the late part of fourth grade, they start to notice, but they still are not ready to do anything about it. When they move over to middle school, it's where we start to lose kids. Because those kids who are going to drop out of high school have already started to make some decisions back around 6th and 7th grade that school is just not for them. There are many reasons they make those decisions. They might feel that they're not accepted in that setting, that nobody cares about them, that the work is too difficult. And a question was asked about science and math and how you get through those courses. You get through those courses with a lot of support, with developing study groups, with going to the learning labs, going to that professor, because once a professor finds out that you are really interested and you are willing to commit to the study time, they will turn over every stone to try and help you. So it is important that you seek out that help. Now, I realize I'm jumping around, but that's because I know my time is short and I have to say a lot in a short period of time. But let me mention math and science. So important. We need more teachers in math and science. And quite often, it has been said that our students are not more successful in math and science courses in public school because the teachers don't have the content knowledge to teach those courses. And so we can do something long term. We can start working with those students very, very early and help them to achieve some success in math and science. Not a day goes by that they're not exposed to math and science in some way. And we need to bring it to their attention that this is what it's all about. And it can be a lot of fun. And you can enjoy it and you can get a career. Because if we don't do that, we will continue to see the dearth of math and science teachers that represent people of color. It is important to have someone. Now, that is not to say that we cannot have successful students if they don't see someone who looks like them in front of the classroom. But it does make a difference. And so we want to encourage that students of color go into math and go into science, and that we do those things to help them to be successful. Now I'm going to wind down. At the system where I am employed, we have almost 60,000 students. Our Hispanic student population grew by 83% in 5 years. Our entire system is now 25% Hispanic, 25% or more Hispanic. And do you know that we still have that overrepresentation of African American students and Hispanic students in developmental education? They come for remediation and they don't go away for a long, long time. So we need to start doing something back in the public schools to strengthen the skills that students have, because quite often they come to college with that fear of math. And sometimes it's because they have not had anyone to tell them that they can do it or to show them that they can do it and it's easy. I mentioned Dion. Dion was in the Math and Science Academy that we had here at Austin Community College for fourth graders. And that was a group of Hispanic and African American students, many of whom had been considered at risk. The teachers had given up on them, and so they came to classes at one of our colleges, at one of our campuses. The college faculty taught them physics, chemistry, math, geology, biotechnology, and those kids could deal with any concept that was presented to them. They were fourth graders, and these were students that most of the teachers had given up on them. They proved to us that they could do it, and I contend that if we do something like that, as we are teaching, as we are working with these kids every day, you will be amazed at what they will show you. So it's the affection that you show them, it's the caring that you show them, it's the respect that you show them. The gentleman here was talking about wanting these students to respect teachers. That's a two-way street. And we need to make sure that we show them as much respect as we want them to show us. And when they're difficult, we need to continue to care about them. And we need to continue to teach them. And we need to continue to praise them, because education, as with many other fields, has been built on the deficit model. You identify a person's weaknesses, and then you start trying to strengthen those. Well, what about identifying their strengths and playing up those strengths and continuing to build their self-esteem and their knowledge by working with what they bring to the table? So I guess my time really is up, although there is much that I could say, but I will mention this. You're probably working with the college readiness standards. All of this came out of House Bill 1 in the 79th legislature here several years back. The college readiness standards are in place, and we are developing courses through vertical alignment teams to identify where the gaps are in knowledge between high school and college. Well, that vertical alignment is well underway. We haven't achieved it yet, but the alignment goes back to the lower grades as well. So we will have to determine where gaps might exist between middle school and high school, and then on back to elementary school, until we have covered the whole gamut of education and put into place those courses, that content that will allow those students then to feel better about what they know in high school, to perform better in school, and to come out on the other side with that degree and to go on to become teachers, to become math professors, to become whatever it is they want to become. But you are the key to that happening. You can absolutely do it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Danetta. Danetta is the reason that I'm standing in front of you now. She hired me as dean, so you can blame her. I want to thank everyone for coming and for staying. I hope you had a good time. I'm going to take the prerogative, actually, of talking about two things before we go. One is a story that just happened to me, an event that just happened to me last week, last Thursday, I guess it was. I have a 6-year-old son who's playing t-ball. And we had one of those kids on the team, I think we referred to them earlier as heathens. And as a teacher, I looked at this kid who's 6 years old, and he's running everywhere, and he's taking the tee, if you know tee, and he's bending it and about to whack somebody with it. And he's every time when they're in the field, he's running. They hit the ball, and he runs and then grabs the ball from the other kid. Right. So it's just like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with this kid? It turned out that last Thursday the coach wasn't there, so the parents had to step in a little bit more. And so I was out in the field, and I had James, I won't tell you his last name. James was beside me at second base, and I was trying to guide him and say, when the ball comes to you, you pick it up and you throw it, and let's not run over there. Well, we went out, so we were doing this, and he kept running across the third base and grabbing the ball, or running right behind the pitcher, and there was this little girl playing with him, and then she started crying because James piled on top of her and grabbed the ball. So we went and batted. We came back out the next inning, and I thought, well, the main thing I want to do is keep James away from this girl, so this girl can catch the ball and have a chance to catch the ball. So I thought, I'll put James at first base. So we put James at first base. The girl stays at short. And I was talking to James. I said, you're in a very important position, and you need to stay here so that when they get the ball, they can throw the ball to you. I didn't expect to succeed in this. I just thought, gee whiz, this was, I'll try something. James stayed at the base the whole inning. And he was there, and he caught the ball that some kids threw to him. And to me, it was an eye-opening. I'm old. I've been teaching a long time. And it was this really eye-opening experience that, gee whiz, all he needed was some responsibility. All he needed was a defined duty. And he did great, you know. So there's just a little hint. You know, but it was, I hate to say, it was eye-opening for me because I was just really doing crowd control, you know. The second thing the last thing I'd like to leave with you is that a couple of years ago as dean, I decided to meet with our adjunct faculty because, believe it or not, as dean, I care about teaching. I mean, I'm still interested in the subject. So we get, our reviews of teachers done every fall, and then we begin to see them in the spring. And so in April, I compiled a list of the adjunct faculty members who made excellent on their evaluations. And we set up 3 or 4 meetings around the college and just invited, a group of these people. And the basic question that I wanted to know and ask them was, why are you an excellent teacher? Your students say you're excellent. So why? What's your understanding of that? And they denied it was the candy they gave out before the evaluation. They denied, that they were easy A's and that sort of thing. And really, almost to the person, in every meeting, they go, I love what I'm doing. They were charged up, they loved it, and they were committed. So every day they went to work and had fun. And we've talked some serious business today, and we've talked about some challenges. The other side of this is, teaching is just great fun. And the students are great people, and they're wonderful people. So if I can leave you with that, thank you for coming. We really do appreciate you coming and talking to us about education. Thank you.